Hey guys, another great edition of Quarantine with Coaches. Today, I go to the receiver room. I got Coach Keith Larson from Bucknell. Coach, how you doing?
Doing great, Coach. Thanks again for having me.
Coach just told me that this wedding, he's got a wedding coming up, and man, you might be the saddest story. I mean, I've heard of amongst the coaches so far. You got a wedding that is now postponed, huh? Well,
Yeah,
the venue's canceled at least.
yeah. So he canceled at the venue. It's going to be a much more intimate wedding. So as I just expressed to you, as many coachisms and as much positivity as I can possibly have, the game will go on, as they say. We might not have fans in the stands, but it's going to happen.
What's been
So
what's been the best
adapting and
coachism
overcoming.
you've used on your wife or future wife?
Best coachism. As far as coachisms go, I'm trying to explain to her that it's all about the final score of us getting married. You know, it's not about the first quarter, second quarter. I can bring up a halftime speech. Ultimately, are we going to win the game? Are we going to get married? That's what it's about.
So you really are getting better through this process just by just getting the practice of using the coachisms on your fiance. That's awesome.
Yeah, something like that. Just try not to get fired at home.
That's great. Hey, talk to us a little bit about your background. You've been at a couple different places, a couple different levels, and now both sides of the ball. Just tell us a little bit about your path to Bucknell.
Sure. So I grew up in Belvedere, Illinois, about an hour north or so from Chicago. From there, I went to Valparaiso University to play. Played safety there at Valpo. Upon the completion of my career at Valpo, I went to Robert Morris University to be a grad assistant. It's actually now Roosevelt University. They compete at the NAIA level, but they're located, it's a very unique setup. The campus is downtown Chicago. They actually play football-wise in Arlington Heights, which is a suburb. So in terms of being a grad assistant, just in terms of logistical hurdles and being a grad assistant, in terms of wearing different hats, definitely the most unique experience that you could possibly have as a grad assistant. So I can get into that more just in the transition of different levels. But from there, I coached defensive backs there. From there, my first full-time gig after that, I went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute out in Troy, New York. Really high academic, really great engineering school, better known as RPI. Everyone knows it as a school that's where Matt Patricia went. But really good football in my time there. Went to the playoffs 2 out of our 3 years. Was a defensive backs coach. My last year, I picked up special teams coordinator responsibilities, which was a huge deal just for me to have an opportunity to be a coordinator really at the age of 26 at a school that was really successful. From there, a little over a year ago, had an opportunity to come to Bucknell as a wide receivers coach. And again, kind of as you already addressed, I'd previously only coached in the secondary, played in the secondary. Now I'm on the other side coaching on offense, but it was just kind of too good of an opportunity to refuse and chance to go up a level. But I've been at Bucknell University now a little over a year as the receivers coach.
Can you talk a little bit about the transition from each level and sort of what you've learned along the way?
Certainly. So the first and foremost, I started as a grad assistant coach at the NAIA level. And the NAIA is one of the most unknown, some people treat it like the Wild West of not having any ideas of what's going on. And just kind of to put it into perspective, we had a really good team in a conference that includes Marian University, St. Francis in Indiana, a lot of the teams that win the national championship. And for us, just to give you kind of a scale of the level, my first year we played UW Oshkosh. We beat them. After that, they went on a run, and I'm pretty sure they went to the semifinals, or they had a really good year in 2014 or 15, whenever that was. So it kind of just told me, all right, this is we were a winning team, but we were going up against one of the top teams in D3, and we beat them. So kind of giving you a good equivalency of, hey, the top D2 teams are probably pretty competitive with the top Division III teams. Just kind of that overlap. But yeah, just your coaching scholarship football. At the same time, I was also an admissions counselor there. So that's the biggest thing is you see the smaller the level, you wear different hats. So I'm 23 years old. I have my own student loans I'm still paying from Valpo, yet I am giving financial aid and admissions advice to kids and their families. Like, to me, in terms of like growing up on the fly, that's a lot on top of just coaching. And I mentioned the logistics. Our campus was downtown Chicago. our kids would take a train. My first year out, they were taking public transit. We picked them up at a train station in vans to get them to practice. My second year, they were taking coach buses round trip. But either way, just the kind of logistical hurdles we were going through was crazy. So that was my taste of the NAIA level. And again, just kind of an interesting perspective of just, hey, how does this compare to other levels? Still being scholarship football. Then going to the Division III level, first time being exposed to that, being at RPI. I was very fortunate to be at a school that truly had a niche in terms of the engineering, had a great business school. It's a nationally recognized institution. So you kind of recruited backwards in that sense. You found the kids that were a fit for you academically, then looked at their football ability, which is definitely very different than doing recruiting at different levels. But, was also the director of football operations there. So in terms of wearing different hats, again, being 24 years old, 25 years old, and you're in charge of all the meals, you're in charge of all the transportation, the hotels. In terms of me being a better man and coach, yeah, you grow up a lot. So I'm really appreciative of that. Then just the chance to, be a coordinator of special teams. That wouldn't have happened had I not been at the Division III level. So to have the pulse of, 60 plus guys of the team at that young of an age and get that responsibility, that was pretty unique. And then now going from Division III to Division I at Bucknell, again, it's a school that's really highly regarded academically. The Patriot League is really similar to the Ivy League in terms of the profile that you're looking at. So a common question is, hey, have you coached differently at each level? The answer to me is no. In terms of your coaching style, it's still going to be unique to yourself, and you're going to have a style and a way that's best for you to communicate to your players. The biggest difference, once again, is just the different hats that you're wearing, and the understanding of, hey, I coach at an FCS school, yes, but our staff structure is literally the exact same as the Division III one I just left. We only have 10 coaches. We don't have grad assistants. We have one volunteer coach, and that varies. So just learning that, hey, even though you're a Division I coach or you're at the FCS level, what that looks like can be just so different. And so it's just been a real eye-opening experience for me just in that sense.
And I mentioned it earlier, you just talked about it a little bit, right? You transitioned from the defensive side now to the offensive side. What are some of the benefits that you've encountered in this transition to wide receivers coach?
Yeah, so I mean, just the most general thing, the easiest thing to see is your understanding of the game. Obviously, is that much better, and an appreciation for the game of football and just kind of how the whole operation works from both sides. But for me as a coach, the bigger takeaway is just what a humbling experience also. You go from being a coordinator to feeling like, hey, you have a really good idea of special teams. I was really comfortable with running a whole secondary. And now I'm literally the dumbest guy in the room because I've never done anything related to offense before. I was a high school quarterback, yes, but that was a long time ago, and it has nothing to do with what you're doing as a coach. So just kind of that humbling aspect. And then just the biggest change or difference for me has just been from a scouting perspective. When I was on defense, I always saw the offense as very black and white. This is what they do. Now that I'm on offense, there's a lot more conversations about, hey, people thinking this is what they do. There's a lot more gray area because ultimately on defense, yeah, you have an assignment. They're going to take the first 2 to 3 steps, but after that, it's all reactionary. So the debates of, hey, is this zone? Is this some kind of combo coverage? Are they doing this? Like that is something I hadn't been exposed to. But yeah, the simplest answer is definitely a lot more gray and up for interpretation from a scouting perspective. And the other thing is I mentioned us having a smaller staff. I run the scout team. So now I'm talking to guys about how they play on defense, even though I'm an offensive coach, which I wasn't doing before. So now I'm coaching equally defense during practice. Also, I'm drawing up all the scout cards from a defensive perspective anyway. So if you asked me to draw something, I mean, I'd go in a full circle. I couldn't tell you what side is which. There is no wrong side to draw anymore, just because it all kind of blends together for me.
That's awesome. One thing before I let you go here, you're still a relatively young coach, but what advice would you give to young coaches right now who are watching this who would like to emulate your career?
Yeah. So the advice you hear from everyone that I'm not going to disagree with, I think is very important, is just truly trusting that process, just like you tell your players, and being grounded, where you're at. And you hear that again and again. Outside of that, the biggest advice I'm going to give that, not everyone in the football industry might agree with or staff-wise agree with. I think it is so important that you get outside of your football bubble at your school. Become friends and establish relationships with the other coaches on those staffs around you, because truly it is about the community of your school. And you're going to be in a pinch. You're going to have problems. If you don't have relationships with those other coaches, you run into a lot of issues. And especially in the football industry, for some reason, we stay in this bubble and we do not trust anyone, or we don't even talk to anyone outside of the football world. And that's definitely noticed. So whether it's you on the weekends getting a round of golf, if you can, with another coach, if you play noon hoops, which I do when I can, just with other staff members, if you truly want to be bought into your university and have real relationships, I think it is so important to get outside of your football office. Just because you spend so much time with those guys, you need to establish a bigger network at your university.
Very good. We'll do a little rapid fire before I let you go. Is that all right?
That's all right.
Awesome. Hey, what's the book that's had the biggest impact on you?
Yeah. So book-wise for me would actually be something, I think I have it on my nightstand or somewhere around, Coaching Matters by Tom Osborne. I have actually been in it's kind of like a coach's Bible group, but expanding on it, we picked a book to read, again, not just with football coaches, but all kinds of coaches at Bucknell. And once a week, we talk about Tom Osborne's philosophies. And just the biggest takeaways for me, the cool thing about this book is you see Scott Frost come along as a player and as a leader, kind of going through his journey. You go full circle. He's doing okay as a coach right now. But Tom Osborne definitely has a lot of good things that we can relate to and learn from, definitely as a football coach.
What is the TV series that you've been binge watching during this time?
Yeah, so for me, I'm one of the people that has started rewatching, one of those things that you might have forgotten the quirks of or appreciating it. So I'm back into Mad Men right now, which Mad Men, if you haven't seen it, it's kind of the best characterization of a 1960s version of Wolf of Wall Street, really. So if you're trying to ramp it up recruiting-wise and be a madman, just selling advertising, not necessarily condoning like what they do, but it's really good to watch and very entertaining.
Who is, I should say, the best Twitter follower you have? Who's the best guy?
Yeah, so for me, it's someone that I think you have mentioned or seen before, but Matt Drinkle. I definitely love his content and quality. He's someone that, I first saw on Twitter, and I reached out to him and I was like, man, I love your content. I love your outlook. Next thing you know, like a day later, we were talking on the phone for about a half an hour, and that's someone I continue to keep in touch with. But he is phenomenal. So if you don't follow Matt Drinkle, you need to.
He is awesome. And what's been your go-to quarantine meal?
Yeah, so even before quarantine started, my fiance and I are linked in with one of those food services where you get 3 meals a week. So it's called Every Plate. So they don't have the meals ready to go. You're given the ingredients, which are fresh ingredients, and then you have instructions of how to make them. So for me in the kitchen, in terms of learning and growing, I've had to do things like zesting, pickling, words that are very foreign to me that I've never heard of. And I've had to Google some things. I've had some tense moments where I just simply didn't understand. And sometimes I don't follow the directions at all. I kind of just do my own thing. Either way, just kind of having that, my routine has been not having a routine and just being told what to do with the Every Plate service. So I'm lucky that we already had that going into quarantine.
Nice. And you played safety, right? And now you're a receivers coach. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. True or false, defense wins championships?
True. Yes. It does take a defense because it also takes an offense and it takes the whole team.
There we
yes,
go. I like
true.
it. Coach, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on Quarantine with Coaches.
Thanks again for having me. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job.